This episode of the Tech Arts Podcast is brought to you by ProLights. For more information, go to aclighting.com. Education is a big thing in the church community, but what is the right move for you and your team? Joining us today to talk about a conference that will level up your knowledge is Stephanie Lippy from CFX. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi.
Stephanie, tell us about the new and improved CFX conference.
Yeah, we're really excited this year. We have an opportunity with a lot of new hands-on training that you can get. We've got a lot of audio classes. So if you're trying to level up your audio, this is the place to go. We've got Alan and Heath doing sessions. We've got Meyer Sound doing sessions. There's just a bunch of them. There's also a lot of opportunities to learn more about video and editing, directing, camera operation, lighting. We're covering a bunch of stuff that we haven't been able to cover before. And this year we have both keynote sessions and general sessions. And in our keynote session, he's going to be talking about how to use your faith to support your ministry role. And then in the general session, we have Justin Firesheets and Jeremy Van Valkenburg talking about, okay, so now how do you take what Ryan Miller in the keynote session talked about and incorporate that specifically into your worship production? Lots of exciting stuff.
It's not just for techs, right? I noticed if you're a pastor out there listening and you're like, it's just a tech conference, kind of explain what you guys have done, because it looks like multiple conferences all in one.
Absolutely. That's a great question. We have 4 conferences for different people in the church. One for anyone planning a building project. So, and that includes tech upgrades, but it also includes construction projects. We've got a conference for safety and security, and we have a conference for facility stewardship and daily operations.
It sounds like a lot going on. I'm going to be there. Hundreds of churches across the country are going to be there, so you don't want to miss CFX 2024. You'll make new friends, you'll learn new techniques, and you'll grow your knowledge. So register today by going to churchfacilitiesexpo.com. It's happening October 21st through the 23rd in beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee. You don't want to miss this. churchfacilitiesexpo.com. Register today.
This is the Tech Arts Podcast, where we talk about tech, leadership, and all things that concern church audio, video, and lighting.
Welcome to the Tech Arts Podcast and the Earthworks Audio Studios. My name is DL. So glad to have you joining us today. You don't want to miss a second of this episode. First, our tech tip is a game changer. I don't want to give it away, but it has to do with a new system that will change your approach to lighting. For our main segment, the ProLights team will conduct a light lab. That's why we're calling this episode Light Lab with ProLights. In this lab, they will help you define who your church is, they'll help you understand lighting basics, and we'll dive into some budget questions as well. Plus, we will answer questions like, what's the most important piece to broadcast lighting? Why does white balance and color balance matter? And what is a light meter and how does it help you? Hey, I want to thank all of our sponsors, especially ProLights, Digico, and Earthworks Audio. Speaking of sponsors, we have a new one. I want to welcome Paragon 360 as a sponsor of the Tech Arts Podcast. If you want to find out more about Paragon 360's integration services, go to paragon360.com. Paragon 360, thank you for helping us with our mission to equip churches on tech principles and best practices that help them create a compelling church service. Paragon 360 will have a monthly segment on the Tech Arts Podcast called The Paragon Angle. Today, they talk about the single most important question to ask when doing a construction or renovation project. Wow, I can't wait to hear the answer to that question. That segment is coming up in about 20 minutes. But first, today's tech tip is Spectra calibration. Do you know what that is? I know I don't. So joining us today to talk about this is Nick and Marcus from ProLights. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, let's jump right into it. I'm not sure who wants to take this first, but Nick, Marcus, what is Spectra calibration and how can it help me?
Yeah, absolutely. So Spectra calibration is a process that ProLights uses to help normalize and regulate all their LEDs across their lines of fixtures. So when you make LED diodes, whatever color they are, you make them in mass. They end up getting, baked in an oven. If you would imagine a big tray of cookies, they all come out. Some of them are a little bit more well done than others. And so what you need to do is you need to make sure they all match. So in the Spectra calibration process that ProLights uses, we put the light in this like dark room, if you will, and then there's a spectrometer. We go through diode by diode, and you end up finding like the deficiencies in each one, and we calibrate the software to make sure that every single light will always be the same color, regardless of any of the micro inconsistencies between the batches of LEDs. Or, say you buy 100 units one year, you buy a couple more the next year, you want those to match. So what the Spectra calibration does is it takes it down from its, peak, so that you have a little bit of area to kind of play with, where you can add in a couple more colors, and helps everything kind of meet perfectly, repeatably on like the XY color spectrum across batches of LEDs. So also helps with like the temperature fluctuations. So it actively monitors within the light, and as things start to get a little bit, maybe a little bit frizzle frazzle, because as temperatures increase, LEDs can start to decay or do a little bit of other things. You kind of want them around 80 degrees Celsius, and as soon as you start to get past that, stuff can start to happen. So the Spectra calibration also helps with the fan speed to come on to keep the LEDs at optimal temperature so that their colors stay optimal. And it finds that perfect balance so that we can get the most color spectrum, but also evenness across the range.
So at the end of the day, I think what you're saying is it allows you to match all your lights. So I'm not getting one LED looking a little bit different from another LED. So Marcus, does it allow you to match other fixtures outside? Like if I already owned a fixture that's not a ProLights fixture, or is this just matching inside the ProLight brands?
It's really matching across the different products that are available from ProLights, from one product to another, like say a profile spot to a par of some type to even a moving head fixture. It's making sure that red is red and blue is blue, green is green, and it's the same across the entire line. Now it does make it easier to be able to match something that's third party that is not a ProLights fixture. It helps with that, and you should be able to get to where you need to be. And then whatever you're controlling with, you can save a preset and kind of match those things. But it's really inside of the ProLights fixtures to be able to match each other and have a standardization between them.
Yeah, it sounds like it would really help with color temperature. So Nick, is this a game changer when it comes to color temperature for television and some of the massive changes that happen between, hey, I want to light my pastor and then I want to light my rock and roll band? Does the Spectra calibration help with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the white is a blending of all the colors, right? So the better calibration you can get, the more pure the white you get. And again, we calibrate it so that it can be perfect on the XY scale of the color spectrum. So when you bring in other fixtures, if they are third-party fixtures, that's how it does kind of help match that. So even though it's done for the ProLights line, it does kind of help you match any other third-party lights that you may have. But when it comes to your whites, your broadcast whites, the fact that we can get everything kind of perfectly and in tune and repeatable, right? Again, that's what we want. We want everything to be repeatable. We want that 5600 Kelvin to always be 5600 Kelvin. And so the fact that it's actively monitored and, gets everything where it needs to be, it really is why we have such a good white out of our Spectra calibrated fixtures.
And Marcus, when I saw you put that hat on, I knew you were the rock and roll guy. So I got to ask you this question. When it comes to church rock and roll, like what fixtures would you recommend for them to use to work great with their pastor, but yet then be awesome with all the wacky colors that come out during the worship segment?
Well, one of the nice things about what's offered from ProLights currently is that there are so many options to be able to do that. You have all kinds of different tools to be able to use. We offer everything from moving head fixtures to be able to do some of the patterns and really quick movement and those kind of things for that rock and roll look. And then there's just, if you need great front light or you need great color saturation, there's also options for that. So a little bit of everything's out there. Specific fixtures, there's everything from like our profile spot, the CT Plus, which is great for front light, and there's fixtures like our new ECL PAR that is just an amazing, could be a great top wash fixture or a fixture to be able to just throw color into an area that you need to. And they're all very, very fast, and they're ready to go for that rock and roll show look if you need it. But they're also just a really true, well-calibrated, smooth-looking fixture as well. So you've got kind of the best of both worlds with the ProLight stuff that's out there right now.
And I'm a church. I've got Source 4s. I mean, do you have any options for me? Like, do you have anything that goes with my Source 4 lenses?
Absolutely. So all of the profile spots that we offer through AC lighting with ProLights is compatible with Source 4 lenses. So if you have, if your church has a lot of Source 4s that are kind of at end of life, and you're looking for a potential replacement of the engine of that fixture, we have a lot of options out there that are full color with very high CRI whites as well, and they've been amazing, and they work well in a retrofit scenario and for a reasonable budget as well. They're very cost effective too.
So last question before I ask you guys how people can get in touch with you, because it sounds like you have a lot of options here. Why would I want the Spectra calibration? We've talked about a lot of good reasons, but what's like one good reason for somebody to say, hey, I need this Spectra calibration?
Sure. So again, it comes down to not having to worry about what you've already bought. Number one, first and foremost, we all know with the LED industry, things come quick. And the last thing you want is an out-of-date rig. So everything moving forward with ProLights is Spectra calibrated. So you know that if you were to buy stuff a year after, 2 years after, it's all going to be the same. And again, it comes down to that repeatability and that being able to trust on that color. So if you were to ever look at a fixture that has not been calibrated, and then you have another one of that same fixture also not calibrated, and you turn them on and you put them at the same thing, they just won't match. You need to calibrate it. And there are, other companies do their own forms of calibration. And so that's something to know and to look into if you are going to go with another vendor is, what kind of calibration do they do, and make sure you check it and trust it.
But at the end of the day, if I buy a light from you guys today and I buy another light from you a year from now with Spectra calibration, they'll match.
100%.
That's pretty awesome. Nick, tell us what the best way to get in touch with ProLights is. How do I start this Spectra family journey with you guys?
Sure. Yeah. So ProLights is exclusively distributed by AC Lighting here in North America. You can go to aclighting.com. We've got a bunch of different contacts. We've got all of our sales reps listed by region. So it'd be really easy based on where you are. Just look up, what state is color coded to which person, shoot them an email, their phone number, their email is right there. They can help you out. They can put you in touch with someone who can get you some pricing and a local dealer as well.
So to get in touch with ProLights, go to aclighting.com. You can click the contact link there as well. For lighting choices that will illuminate your world, go to aclighting.com. Now, Marcus, I hear we're giving away a ProLights Data Master, and everybody who tunes into the Tech Arts podcast knows that we give away a lot of cool things. Tell us a little bit about what the Data Master is and how it can help them so that they're all itching to get their hands on this thing.
Sure thing. A ProLights Data Master is really a testing tool to be able to send out or receive DMX and test your lights, know what the DMX in your room is doing. It's also got an RDM feature built into it, so you can configure some lights if your fixtures have RDM capabilities built into them. So it's just a nice little testing tool that you can kind of keep in your kit and be able to sometimes save the day with a little tool like a Data Master. It's amazing. In the past, I've used it many times, and I'm amazed of what it does in such a small package. So it's a cool little tool.
Yeah, it's a cool tool. Plus, it is free. We are giving it away. So if you go to ProLightsPodcast.com. There'll be a link there. Just click on the link, register for the free giveaway. We'll do a drawing. We're not giving it to everyone, but we are doing a free drawing to give the Data Master away to a lucky winner. So again, go to TechArtsPodcast.com to register for that. Nick, Marcus, I would love to have you guys stay on for the next segment and talk to us a little bit more about lighting. Do a little light lab with ProLights. You guys game for that?
Absolutely.
Totally.
All right. In just a few minutes, we will talk with the ProLight team about three things. Number one, defining who your church is. Number two, understanding the lighting basics. And number three, budget. So in typical church fashion, D for define, U for understand, B for budget. To me, that's duh. For all you non-sports people, the win. So we're going to go for the win right after these messages from our sponsors. Hang on.
Yes, we need to renovate the sanctuary because it looks like 1981 and smells like 73, but why? Today, we're going to talk about the single most important question to ask when doing a renovation or new construction project. Hello, I'm Donnie Bronner, owner and CEO of Paragon 360, and this is the Paragon Angle. When you start out to do a renovation or new construction project, your architect or your audio, video, lighting integrator or design firm, they should be asking the question, why? It's that simple. The most important question is, why are we doing this project? Who attends? Who's the core, right? Who's the target? Come on, I know we love everybody and everybody's the target, but who is the target? There's got to be a target. Who are we trying to reach? Let's talk about styles. Is there multi-generational impact to deal with? Does your space reflect your core values? If not, why? Does it need to? Is it designed for the churched or unchurched? Many integrators may not be digging that deep into all that, but they should if they're really trying to solve the issues and meet the objectives as opposed to just trying to sell gear. This should be informing our decisions as we work through design. If we're going to spend a bunch of money, you'd better know why, because the people you need to support the project are going to want to know why. When casting vision, it's critical to ask the question, why? Why are we doing this? What are the real goals and objectives of this project? What are the ministry goals of this project? And does this design speak to why and help us achieve those goals? So yes, we need to renovate the sanctuary because it looks like 1981 and smells like 73, but why? So the project campaign should be built around that, obviously, but it should also drive the decisions that the designers and planners make. In over 1,000 projects in 24 years, I've yet to find a client that can afford everything they want. Yes, even here at Prestonwood, they have a budget too. So it comes down to priorities, and it comes down to being crystal clear about what we're doing and why. I promise you this, reaching people that are not there now, and reaching the growing unchurched crowd, slowing the decline in the church, engaging with people at home, reaching the new core of the church, which is millennials and Gen Z, those answers will not be found in a new PA system, or because you took out the pews for seats and removed the plants, or because you got rid of the Baptist beige. It goes deeper than that. If we're trying to reach people that are not there now, it's going to require a big thought process. Trust me, this is easier to get it wrong than it is to get it right. The new core of your church is interested in community, gathering spaces, connection, fellowship, children, and security. So understanding how your renovation plans are going to facilitate that is going to be key. Now, it doesn't help for your architects, master planners, integrators to ask those questions if they don't know what to do with the information, because a lot of the architects are architects, but they don't really understand the church. And churches are very complicated spaces to design and get right. Or there are AVL companies that don't really know the decisions, how their decisions impact the bigger goals of the project because they're focused on selling gear. But think through all of that when making decisions about who you want to have help you with your project. It's imperative that we get this right the first time. So if you want to motivate or inspire people to get behind the project or your new initiative, you must start by casting a compelling vision. And the why has to be at the center of that vision, which means it should lead the design process from the very beginning. It has to be front and center. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you in the next Paragon Angle.
From sold-out stadiums to intimate live performance venues, sound engineers agree on one thing for the best digital mixing consoles for live sound. The only name that matters is Digico. As the recognized worldwide standard for live audio mixing, Digico consoles are renowned for their industry-leading sound quality and ease of use. Whether your application is in a church, broadcast, theater, corporate, sports, or installed sound, Digico offers compact and affordable products. From the S21 all the way up to the pioneering power of the Quantum 852, Digico delivers the workflow, the feature set, and the absolute reliability that the world's biggest tours and programs have come to rely upon. If you're looking for a sound console, look to Digico for your answer. For more information on Digico, go to digico.biz. That's digico.biz.
What's MXU? We get asked that all the time. MXU is the platform for churches to recruit, train, and retain their volunteer teams. It starts with our vast content library with discipline-specific training videos. You can assign videos to team members, upload your own videos, and you can even organize them into courses for a more guided approach. You can keep track of a volunteer's watch progress and check in when they might be falling behind. And with groups, you can keep track of multiple teams and assign roles to specific users to give them the ability to manage your volunteer team. It doesn't matter if you're a team of 5 or 50, MXU will help you care for and stay on top of training for each volunteer. This is MXU, used to help churches recruit, train, and retain their volunteer teams. Join the community and start using MXU for free today.
From front of house to center stage, for over 25 years, Earthworks microphones have sculpted the sounds of your favorite concerts, venues, and performances. Earthworks Audio is a sponsor of the Tech Arts Podcast. We are so happy to have them on board and excited to promote the new Earthworks SR117 vocal mic and capsules. To find out more about Earthworks Audio or to get your hands on this mic, go to earthworksaudio.com. That's earthworksaudio.com. Capturing emotion with sound. earthworksaudio.com. Luminex Network Intelligence manufactures data distribution equipment for professional lighting, audio, and video applications. Luminex offers a complete range of network switches, converters, nodes, and DMX splitters, providing AV designers and technicians with cutting-edge technology to build complete data distribution systems for churches, big events, or large venues. Through products like the Luminode, Luminex keeps it simple and allows the user to easily control what they need to do or how they need to do it. Whatever your configuration is today, or whatever your configuration is in the future, Luminex is designed for today, but built for tomorrow. Luminex Network Intelligence, AV networking made easy. For more information, go to aclighting.com. That's aclighting.com. Our main sponsor is Digital Grade Commission Ministries. Whether you need help building a team, finding the right gear, or just better understanding the church tech world, DGCM is here for you. Because they are a 501c3 donor-sponsored organization, they come to your church for free and do an assessment of your tech, visitor engagement, and online streaming. Plus, we give away free gear. Be sure to go to audiovideolighting.com and register your email today. This will sign you up for all of the free giveaways and give you first access to everything we offer for free. If you want free resources, training, or consulting, contact Digital Grade Commission Ministries today by going to audiovideolighting.com. That's audiovideolighting.com. This episode of the Tech Arts Podcast is brought to you by ProLights. For more information, go to aclighting.com. Welcome back to the Tech Arts Podcast. From ESPN to churches, these guys bring over 40 years of experience to the pro lighting market. Joining us today is Nick and Marcus from ProLights. Hey, guys.
Hey there.
How's it going?
We entitled today's show Light Lab with ProLights, and our goal today is to hit 3 topics. We want to define who your church is, understand the lighting basics, then we want to hit budget. But before we jump into that, Nick, Marcus, tell us a little bit about yourselves and your experience.
Like David said, my name is Marcus. I've been with AC Lighting, and I'm the Southwest United States sales rep with AC for the last 3 years, and blessed to be on the team there. And before that, I spent 7 years in House of Worship consulting and integration with a firm out of Kansas City, and was in a lot of churches over the course of 7 years, working in a lot of different environments, from traditional spaces all the way to very contemporary churches. And then before that, I spent 10 years as a production director for a large church in the Kansas City area. So it's been a good ride of a lot of years working directly with churches across the country, all based kind of in the middle of the country, but working coast to coast with all kinds of different churches in different places all over the country. So
Nick, before you jump in on your resume, Marcus has got the cool lighting background changing and everything behind him. It's such a nice, soft atmosphere. It looks like we caught you on the road at a hotel. Is that where you're at?
You did. You absolutely did. I do a little bit of travel these days. So I'm the North American ProLights brand manager with AC Lighting. Started my career doing live theater for some first nonprofits, and then Miami Stage Company, a couple other places down south, and then moved up north. From there, I ended up transitioning. I was the technical director for Performing Arts Magnet School, started my own scenic design and construction company, and then transitioned into broadcast lighting with ESPN, where I spent 10 wonderful years working my way up from one of their lead lighting specialists all the way up to their lighting director, where I helped design and procure and install their lighting in their main broadcast studios, as well as their remote settings and home studios. So unfortunately, I'm well-versed to the background of a hotel room.
Well, you guys have a ton of experience in the lighting marketplace. I spent a lot of time in the church market. So, Marcus, I feel your pain there. And Nick, I watched ESPN. I still watch ESPN like every single day of my life. So I feel like I'm a part of both of your lives.
Perfect.
But let's jump right into this here. Kind of the first thing we want to talk about is defining who your church is. And when we did the pre-meeting, I think this was really important to you, Marcus, in terms of what churches do and how they do it. And one thing I've noticed is that a lot of churches fall into this copy and paste mode, and they really struggle to define who their church is. And tell us, why is that? And how can you help churches not fall into that trap?
Well, it's definitely different depending on, the church and location and size and those kind of things. But there is definitely a scenario that happens where churches see something they like either from another church most of the time, or a pastor sees something that he likes at another church, or they go to a conference, or they're inspired by something, or they see something on TV or at a concert or something like that. And they're like, hey, we should try that in our room. Well, usually the budget that is attached to something that is a high quality production that they're seeing it somewhere else is the budget is usually not there when it comes down to being able to replicate that in their church. And then the question is, why should you replicate that exactly in your church anyway? So we see that a lot of churches are not necessarily doing what's best for them. They're somewhat, they're influenced by these other churches that are trying to attain a different goal. And you kind of have to decide, what are the goals that I want to hit here at this church, or that we're supposed to hit as a church, and then strive for those, not strive for someone else's goal. So,
give me an example of what some of those goals would be. Like, what would help define the church and what they need?
I mean, simple goals are, we want to make our live stream look a little bit better. Maybe our stage is too dark. Maybe we want to transition from a more traditional style, sometimes of music, to more of a contemporary style, but at the same time do it in a classy way that isn't just trying to be a lot of show. We're trying to say, this is why we're doing it, and thinking about it maybe holistically, not necessarily just from if I buy this thing, it will make me cooler. That's not what we're going for, right? We're trying to find the thing that meets the goal that you're trying to set. So it's different for every single church, though. There is no solution out there that's going to say, I should do this, and it's going to bring people to my church or have more influence or anything like that. There are different formulas that are going to definitely work, things that are going to be attractive to people and sometimes bring more people into your church. But you want to stay away from the gimmicks. You want to stay away from things that are, kind of fly by night, and say, okay, this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is why we should do them. And then know those things, like understand, like to your core what you're about, and then buy the systems or buy the lighting or audio, video, anything technical that would enhance or support that vision and that goal, not just something because you saw that it was cool.
So let me start with you on this one, Nick. Essentially, what I'm hearing Marcus say is you need to figure out what's the most important thing. Like, what's your goal? And Nick, as somebody who's worked from theater to ESPN, how did you define that with those secular organizations?
Sure. So you know what's always interesting is it doesn't matter if you're a church or you're a theater, but understanding kind of your community base or your ticket base or the people that are coming to partake in whatever you're doing is so important, right? You got to read what sort of energy you as a church or as a theater want to put out there. So as a theater, if you're trying to make your season, you got to kind of know where you are, the clientele that you have, what kind of shows they want. For a church, I hate to say it like as a brand, but you got to kind of know where you fit and how the personalities that you have up on stage or the personalities you have in your congregation. And it's really about embracing that persona and then utilizing the tools and the systems to help emphasize that and bring that out, right? Like you don't want to try to fit yourself into a different mold. If you're a triangle, try and be a triangle. If you're a circle, try and be a circle. But it goes back to the whole thing, trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't always end up well. So kind of the more you're able to define who you are, what you want to portray, how you want to reach out to the people, the more you're able to define that and then use your lighting or your performances or anything like that to help emphasize and exaggerate it, that's where I think you would see the most success.
Yeah, I like to, and I'll let you jump in on this, Marcus, but I like to say this. In the secular world, they have to figure out how to sell tickets to people. They have to figure out how to get eyeballs on the television. And both of those things mean that they're very narrow focused on what the goal is and who their audience is. I think churches miss that a lot of times and they just throw this super broad net. So Marcus, speak into that a little bit more on the most important thing.
Yeah, it's important to figure out what your DNA is. Like, who are you? What do you, once you know that, it actually becomes a lot easier. Once you have defined those things about yourself, you can then say, okay, this is who we are, and this is what we're producing here. I always come back to simplicity is key. Do the simple things well, and don't put the flash and trash out there if that's not your culture. If you have a really great communicator as a pastor, and that's the feature for why people are a lot of times coming to your services live. Light him well, make him sound good. And you don't need all this other support most of the time because the guy he's holding down the ship, he's making it go. So I would say like just do the basics well, and that will help define what your culture and your DNA is. Once you figure out, hey, this is who we are. It makes it a lot easier going forward from there.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is the most important thing is figuring out what your DNA is as a church. I also hear one other thing come into mind, and that is motivation. What's your church's motivation? If you're a church that, hopefully you do a lot of things, but let's say your church is focused on the young single mothers. You know what I mean? That motivation and that goal literally will change how your music sounds, how your lighting happens. It'll change everything about how that church feels. If your church has the older generation, now I know a lot of people want to have what I call the Katy Perry effect, where she says, hey, I want to reach everybody from age, 5 or 6 to age, 86. You know what I mean? But there are some realities. If you're in a college town and the majority of your congregants are younger, that's going to change the way it's lit. And so I think there's some motivation behind this as well. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you want your lighting to be an addition, right? Like you want it to help and to emphasize. You don't want it to be, you can use it as a crutch occasionally, but it really should help emphasize your goal or what you're trying to portray and work with you, as opposed to either being a distraction or being non-complementary. So you want it to fit into your emotion, your target audience, and your delivery.
Yeah, your target demographic that you're trying to reach is a factor in figuring out your DNA. Like being able to say, okay, this is who we're going to reach. Maybe it's a wide group of people, but most of the time, like you were saying, it's more of a specific kind of group that we usually work well with this type of a person. And these are the people that are singing in our congregation. And also maybe the people that are on stage communicate better to a certain demographic of people as well. Realizing all of that helps with the direction you should go when it comes down to everything from choosing a lighting rig to, what kind of music you're going to play in the service and all those kind of things and all the tools that support all that.
Yeah, I like to tell people, as much as Metallica would like to reach the country audience, they know that's not their audience. And so who they're targeting and how they're approaching their, tours and bands and locations and how they do things is different. I think a lot of times churches don't realize that. And by not realizing that, they go out and try to be what I hear all the time. They try to be elevation when they're not elevation. That's not who their pastor is. That's not who their worship team is. I think there's a second piece to this that trips up churches, and that leads us into kind of the second segment here, which is understanding lighting basics. And Nick, kick us off with that. Like, I know you did ESPN, so a lot of lighting basics circle around broadcast lighting. I know there's some basics with live lighting as well, but talk to us a little bit about the lighting basics.
Yeah. And, as great as LEDs are, I think they may have contributed a little bit to tripping people up, because people have forgotten kind of what was so great about LEDs. And that was the how many options it kind of gave you, right? Now, for example, when you are in a broadcast sort of situation, you'll notice a lot of places shoot in a cooler color temperature, like a 5600 Kelvin, like a daylight. And the reason we do that is because most of the time you have displays behind you that are televisions or LED panels, and those all do really, really well in a cool white, like a daylight. Now, if you don't have any displays behind you, I would always suggest still gearing your talent lighting more towards tungsten. It's way more flattering on the skin tones. It helps give people depth and a little bit more color in their skin. So you got to know why you're doing what you're doing, right? So when it comes to putting things on camera, you always have to make sure that your camera is color and white balanced to whatever you're putting on your talent skin tone. So if you've ever watched something where someone looks either really, really yellow or really, really white or blue, it's mostly because we didn't tune our cameras to match our lighting. And that's very, very important. If you don't do that, nothing is going to match.
And so I want to stop you real quick, Nick,
Sure.
because you just said, make sure your cameras, your lighting is color and white balanced to the camera.
Correct.
You don't know how many churches I've gone into where I say that and they go, what's white balance? So talk a little bit more about that. Focus in on that a little bit. White and color balance. Why is that so important? You're kind of going into that, but really focus in on that for us.
Yeah, and I'll do my best, right? But so color balancing typically deals with the color spectrum. Normally with cameras, you're talking your reds and your blues, and you kind of adjust that for your overall picture. White balance is essentially taking the ambient color temperature. So if you were to think about a lamp back in the day, how that's orangey, but if you go outside, it's a lot bluer, right? But you need that to be the norm on a camera. And so what you're doing is you're telling your camera, this is my native white. So regardless of whether that white is a tungsten or a more of an orangey color, or higher up at the daylight range, you want everything else to look the same. You want your blues to still look blues. You want, if you have scenery behind you or decorations, you want them to look real to life. And so with a camera, you really have to make sure that you're setting that. Otherwise, things behind you will not be accurately colored. And it's kind of as simple as that.
And that plays into your key lights, right? You want your key lights to be properly white balanced with the camera.
Correct.
So that when your pastor walks up and he's in the front key lights, it looks right on the camera. So, Marcus, I'm a pastor. I'm in charge of it all. We're talking about lighting basics. You're like, man, I got key lights, backlights, candy light. We're like, where do I start? Where do I get going on this?
Sure. I mean, if you're starting from the ground up, obviously key lights are probably going to be your number one thing. You need to be able to, have some type of a spoken word message with some good even front wash across the front of it. Most churches have some type of lighting already, and so they're adapting and they're adding things, and that's going into the rest of their rig. And it's really important to standardize your whites. Like Nick was saying, let's find out what color temperature we're going to be, what temperature we're going to be running at, and stick with that. If you have a lot of different fixtures over the course of time, over the course of years, and the whites don't match each other, then that's going to be pretty noticeable on your video pretty quickly. If the pastor walks from one place on the stage to another, and the light is a different type of light with a different white balance, then you're going to end up with a whole different look as he walks around the stage. That's not what anybody really wants. So just thinking about those things at the beginning to go with and say, okay, evenness is really important. The basics and the do the simple things well the first time, and then add to it from that point on. It's not about we don't need all the movers in the whole world, and then all of a sudden our front light is suffering because of it. And it's like, it might look really cool in the room during the music, but if the message suffers, then what's it worth? And asking those kind of questions is important too.
Yeah. If I could tag on to that. So you also, when it comes to your front lights and your back lights, what people don't necessarily know specifically for camera is how much angle also plays into that, right? If your lights are too steep, they're too close to your stage, you're going to get bad shadowing here, under your neck. You're going to make your talent look older. So there are some, I don't want to say standards because every place is different, but in theatrical, you tend to see about a 45-degree angle. When they're making theaters, they like to have their front house electric at about a 45-degree angle. In broadcast, we like to bring that way down. Somewhere around 22 degrees really helps make everything nice and soft, helps everyone look really good. Now, when you come that much shallower, what becomes equally as important is the depth. You still want to have depth behind you and your background, and that's where the backlights come in. And another good rule of thumb, if you're just starting out, and again, experiment with all of this, but whatever you're getting for intensity on the front, and we could use arbitrary numbers, say it's 50, whether you're using foot candles or lumens or whatever, say it's 50. You want about half that on your back is a really, really good ratio. That'll get you to a good starting place. Look at that on camera. Depending on your background, the depth you have, dial it in from there. But that's a really, really good place to start. Well,
you bring me to a question here that I see a lot of churches don't have and don't even know about. Tell us what a light meter is.
So a light meter is a tool that measures, depending on what it is and what brand and how many features you bought in it, will measure intensity And if it's really good, it can measure your color temperature. And if it's really, really good, it'll measure your intensity, your color temperature, and it'll show you a live readout of the spectrum, the color spectrum of that light that you're having. So with an LED, to get a white, you're blending multiple colors to create a white, a good white. And so when you look at the color spectrum, you want a nice, well-rounded, almost semicircle. If you see things with peaks, then you might have to do a little bit of work on your camera. But a light meter is a tool to help make sure that, as Marcus alluded to before, you want evenness for your front wash all the way across stage. So something that we would typically do when we were setting a front wash is you take a reading, you move 5 feet, you take a reading, you move 5 feet, take a reading, and you adjust all your front lights till all of that is within spec and nice and even. That way, when someone is walking across the stage, they aren't dark, then bright, then dark, then bright, then dark, then bright.
Yeah, I go into churches all the time, and they have a dB meter sitting by the audio console. I go back to their broadcast switch, and they have a waveform monitor sitting there on one of their monitors. Those are both tools to be able to figure out how loud my audio is and how bright my video is. And then they don't have a light meter. And I ask, and then they say, I have all these dark spots. They look great in the auditorium, but on television, I got a dark spot and a hot spot. So Marcus, kind of, Nick talked about, you can get really cheap light meters that'll just show, foot candles or lumens. You can get really expensive ones that do like a bunch for you. But if it comes down to just the basic light meter, what is it they're looking for, and how can it help them, map out their stage so that there's not bright and dark spots?
Sure. Well, a tool is only as beneficial as what it does for you and what problems it solves for you. And I would say that if your church needs a light meter because you're really trying to make it as even as possible, then do something just to at least figure out what your lumen rating is and to even it out. You can get some really cost-effective ones out there. I would say for the smaller and medium-sized churches, though, most of the time, could you get by without a light meter? Maybe. It depends on the size of your church and your DNA and all those kind of things. But is it nice to have it? Definitely. It's always great if you're trying to improve and trying to standardize even more and more. Is it a necessity? Is anything really a necessity? But I would say that it's very nice to have. You
don't need a dB meter either until they say, how loud was it today?
Correct.
So, you can get a light meter as cheap as like $100. I think I've seen them for about $150.
Yeah.
David, we actually have some, we live in a crazy age. If you have an iPhone nowadays, there is an app that can use your camera, because your iPhone auto white balances. So that's another really good way to kind of see color temperature in action, is turn a lamp on, then turn it off and watch the iPhone change, because it auto white balances. And so there are apps out there that all you have to do is have an iPhone, and they ask you to wrap a piece of white paper around your camera, and that causes diffusion. So it helps spread the light coming in across your camera sensor. And that is a cheap, under $20, maybe under $30 way that you can start measuring. There are even some free ones. I think you have to deal with ads. But that's a really cheap way to kind of just see if a tool like a light meter would be beneficial to you, and maybe you want to invest in it in the future.
But Marcus, I have the light meter. Mm-hmm. What brightness should I run on my stage?
Oh gosh, Nick might have a better answer for this. It's all over the place. The level that you should run on your stage is whatever your DNA is for your church. Some of the contemporary churches run really, really low lumens on their stage, really, really low candles. But I would say, the more traditional spaces are going to be brighter probably, and the more contemporary places are going to be darker, it seems like.
I don't like Nick. I don't like Marcus's answer. You can run it anywhere you want. That sounds like my lighting. So when I was switching video, that literally sounds like my lighting guy. I want to run it like,
I don't know that there's a standard, but what you have to know is the lower light that you have, the less definition you're going to have between you and your background. So if you were to watch something like a soap opera, you'll notice that everything is very fuzzy. It's still, even though it's 2024, everything on General Hospital still looks really like 1990s. It's because they're shooting at such a low foot candle, somewhere around 18, 19 foot candles. And so the camera has its lens wide open, and it's doing that to let as much light in as possible. And because it's wide open and it's letting in all this light, you're losing your darks and you're losing your depth. So what you want to do is find the range on your camera. So all cameras are different and all lensing on the cameras are different. So depending on how much you spend, your camera might not be able to go super low or super high. But I would recommend, if you can, look at the exposure. You never want to be on your lowest exposure. You never want to be on your highest exposure. So what I always would like to do is go a couple clicks up in the middle, and then I would use my lights. I'd turn them on. I'd look at that waveform monitor that you liked, and I would make sure that I'm nice and even. I'm not too hot. You don't want people's foreheads, cheeks, nose being blown out super white. Mm-hmm. Back in the day with tube TVs, you could literally explode televisions before we started to have controls in place if you had too high of white levels, which is why we now clip things at certain millivolts so that that didn't happen. I mean, it's not a problem anymore with everything being digital, but that's what that waveform monitor is going to show you. It's going to show you where you want to stay below. So it all comes down to kind of what you're trying to do, the picture that you want to show. The more light that you can get into your camera, the more detail you can add to everything. So it's kind of about finding that balance. In broadcast situations where we had a very detailed background behind us, we were somewhere around 90-foot candles. In other more intimate spaces where you had maybe less depth between you and the wall, and so you didn't want to spill too much on it, or you wanted to help the space look a little bit better, sometimes around 40 to 50. So it's all about kind of finding that balance. What is going to dictate it to you is your lighting instruments, how bright they can get, how bright you can get your background, and what your camera is capable of. You want to do all of that.
Mm-hmm. I've found that a lot of churches are trying to shoot at lower and lower foot candles now more than ever. It used to be, somewhere in that 40 to 50 or more. And now it's like, how much can we get away with and how low can we go and still make it look cool where you can see in the space, but what can the camera see? And camera sensors are so much better than they ever used to be. They can almost see in the dark now. So it's like, it's just amazing how lower foot candles are totally usable now, where they weren't maybe 10 years ago.
Now, Marcus, you did just touch on something that, sorry, David, just real quick. You need to make a decision at some point. Are you lighting for the people in your audience, or are you lighting for people at home? Because it's going to be very different. You might have to make a compromise, right? Because if you aren't doing anything on a camera, then you want to make intimacy. You want things to be nice and dark and dim, and you can create that with the lighting inside the studio. That might not be the best on-camera picture. So again, play with your exposure settings, play with your light levels, learn what looks the best with the least amount of compromise. But remember that you're showing two different places at once, and that is a trick that takes mastering.
Yeah, I think there's two different emotions in the service. There's the worship music portion, and some basics don't change, but some things do change for the worship music portion versus the pastor's portion. So, I mean, kind of keep that in mind as well when you're choosing, like, what's my light level going to be? What's my color temperature going to be? There's some things that, hey, my pastor airs on television. And so you may get a much more flatter, brighter stage for your pastor when he's up there versus a pastor that doesn't necessarily air on television and wants a little bit more dynamic look behind them with, moving lights and things of that nature. And Marcus, sorry to give you a hard time on the light level thing, but I had one of my lighting guys that I worked with, absolutely the best lighting guy I've ever worked with, ran the vocalists and the lead singers so dark. It looked amazing on the platform. But as you were talking, I was hearing him as you were saying that. Like, well, we may run it really low. We may run it. I was like, oh man, I gotta bust Marcus on this one a little bit. But I got to tell you though, he was one of the best lighting guys I'd ever worked with because he really understood the dynamic emotion of music. When we got to the sermon, that was pretty easy. The church I worked with was, a TV pastor. So, everything was pretty flat and held position. There wasn't a lot of, tons of weird colors and things going on. But because he understood the emotions of the music, and when he would run, there were certain songs he would run them darker, which would cause them to iris the cameras up on the key light, which would really help some of the background pop. And there were some songs he'd run them brighter, which would cause them to iris the cameras down and change the background. And so as you were talking, I was hearing him come out of it was your mouth, but I was hearing his voice.
It's a huge thing, though. You touched on that. It comes back to people knowing what they want to accomplish with something, and knowing what the goal was. He understood, this is what we're going to shoot for. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And then it was the person that had the ability to push the right button at the right time, and then make it look a certain way and kind of guide through that whole process. So it came down to the people, because everything we can talk about fixtures all day long, but at the end of the day, it's really a tool. It's the people that make things amazing, and hit the right button at the right time, and that's half the battle sometimes in some churches.
Yeah. So, before we move on to the next subject, I just want to say another thing here, and that is I think a lot of churches don't understand what an audience noticed mistake is. And so when it comes to the basics, I like to tell people your techs can sometimes get caught up in all of the stuff. You know what I mean? Here's what my lights can do. Here's how they can do it. Here's how cool they are. Here's how fancy they are. But the person sitting in the seat, or the person watching at home, doesn't see any of that. Was it blue instead of red? They didn't notice. What they noticed was it was so much blue that it was causing things to rip and tear. You know what I mean? Mm. So whereas a tech doesn't necessarily see that. And so I think as a pastor, one thing you want to look out for when it comes to lighting basics is this an audience notice mistake? Meaning I have so much backlight and no key light, I can't see the person. The audience notices that. Make an adjustment to that. There's a lot of examples of this, but I think technicians get caught up in what's cool and what's favorable and what the other church is doing, instead of realizing, hey, I'm sitting in the audience and they're noticing this distract me from what's happening on the platform. I think a lot of times in churches that can help define what the basics are. The other thing I want to go back to is we talked a little bit about color balance and white balance, and why white balance matters, light meters, things of that nature. And churches out there are saying, hey, but I bought my LED lights 2 years ago, and now I'm buying a new set of LED lights. If you are listening to this podcast on techartspodcast.com, we talked about Spectra calibration that can really help you with this. Go back and listen to that tech tip inside this podcast. And if you're listening on Worship Facility Podcast, go to techartspodcast.com, pull the podcast up. You'll be able to hear about Spectra calibration in the tech tip, which will really help you align some of the old LEDs with the new LEDs if you're in the ProLight family. Correct, guys?
Correct.
Yeah. So it won't help you if you got like 18 different types of lights. But if you're inside the ProLight family, Spectra calibration, you want to go find out about that. It's a cool thing. So let's move on to budget here. I don't know who to throw this out to first. I guess I'll go with you, Marcus, on this one. But how much money do you need to have to get a decent lighting system? I know that's a trick question. I'll throw it at you first, Marcus.
I feel so wishy-washy on these answers. I would say it depends on the size of your church, depends on the goals that you set for yourself. But if you're going into, even if you're a small church and you think, oh, I just need a few lights and I'm going to be good to go, I would think again. Really, it comes down to, you do need front lights. You do need some top wash, something on your set behind, like what are we looking at behind the speaker? How many people on stage do you have that are going to be playing instruments, and how do you want to light them? Do you want to go with mainly white light, or do you want color in different places? All kinds of things, even accents in the house. Do you want your house to be lit where the people are during, let's say that a broadcast or a stream is going on? Do you want accent color throughout the house to change and create an environment that's really engaging for people? All questions to ask that come back to budget. Eventually, you have to kind of think, okay, what's realistic? Even the smallest church, somewhere between $15,000 to $30,000 US, was pretty typical for just the smallest of churches to get in and say, okay, we're going to light you fairly well in this space. It's going to look nice. And this is the phase one of maybe 3 phases. As your church grows, you can kind of ease into this. So having a good controller was something that was expandable, and that was always important to say, can I grow with this lighting controller, and can I add on even more channels, or can I add fixtures to this rig eventually? And being able to do that, and knowing that it's a lot of times we see lighting is not just a one-time purchase either. It's kind of, every year as your church has a budget, you can say, I want to do this better, and you need to make sure that you're kind of in the same family with things. And that's where Spectra does come into play is, a year from now or 2 years from now, if you were to make a ProLights purchase initially in a system, and then 3 years later, you end up with another ProLights purchase that is in the same Spectra family as far as calibration, they're going to match each other and they're going to look great, even years apart. And just having a strategy for that is really important. And realizing, the right systems do cost money, but it's an investment for being able to create a really engaging and awesome environment for your congregation to hear the message and to experience your services and things like that. It's an investment that should be made, not necessarily something that should be as least expensive as possible, because you typically get what you pay for when you go with the cheapest route possible.
That's true. Hey, Nick, I'm going to let you jump in on an answer on this, but what I liked what you said, Marcus, was it can be phased. If you have to get key lights first, then you can do some other things later. I really liked that answer. But Nick, it's a little bit of a trick question, like how much money do you need? But give us your answer on that one.
Yeah. So, to Marcus's point, you could spend millions, right? We all know you can spend millions. Just like if you need a car to get to work, you can buy a $2,000 car, or you can have a Rolls Royce. It's still going to get you to work. So the sky's the limit, and then all the toys are out there. But I liked what you said, and how you emphasize on it, that a nice tiered approach, or add-ons, continuous add-ons, like don't let it overwhelm you, but start with, first and foremost, what is the most important? Talent. That's where I would always start. What's good about some of the fixtures that are out there, specifically something like the CT Pluses that ProLights offers, is it's an LED engine that gives you the ability to do your talent lighting. And say in the future you buy some other lights, you can then repurpose these. They have all the colors as well, so you can start using them as your scenic lights. It's got the deep blues in it to help give you all the moody purples and the moody blues that are really, really beautiful to see. And so with a tiered approach, I'd start with talent. I'd then work with atmosphere. Then maybe I'd add pop and sizzle, a little bit of fun stuff. And then when you're at that level and you could start looking at bespoke house lighting, that's when you really take it to the next level, when you start being able to color your whole entire space because your house lights are intelligent and controllable with your lighting board. I think what Marcus brought up, though, that's a really good point that people do need to think of in the beginning, is when it comes to the controller and making sure that that is something scalable. So what I would always recommend if you're just starting out is look into something that might be more, it can still be with the name brand and everything, but maybe something that's more of like a laptop or a smaller board based system, because you can get a lot more for your money, which could free up some of your finances to allow you to purchase more actual instruments. If you look to get an actual console that is just there to do the lighting, you can very, very easily spend $10,000 to $70,000 on it, depending on what you want. And there are some smaller scalable systems that might run on operating systems and computers that allow you to get a lot more bang for your buck. Granted, you're sacrificing the actual board, like you don't have those physical buttons. There's a little bit of keyboard shortcuts, there's learning curves, but in the beginning, it's a smaller investment for the controller, but still allows you to scale up, and it allows you to spend the money on the things that are actually outputting the light for you, so you can kind of round out your image quicker.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to say here is the ProLights brand steps with you on this process. So when you're hearing Nick and Marcus say, hey, maybe we do this console or we do that console, when you get in touch with them and you say, I'm looking to do a system, I'm looking to, buy some lights, They're not going to just sell you on lights. They're going to help understand what you need and make sure that it fits for you. And the AC lighting brands encapsulate lighting consoles. It encapsulates the lights as well. And so there's somebody there that can help you. So don't feel like you're having to figure this out all on your own. When you get in touch with ProLights, they'll help walk you through the process. But lights can be expensive, guys. And I'm seeing a lot of churches do these cheap Chinese brands. Nothing against Chinese brands. I think I'm required to say that nowadays. But walk us through why cheap lighting can sometimes be a problem and why it may benefit you to spend a little bit more money on a ProLight light.
Sure. So where you'll notice the most corners cut when it comes to the cheaper lights is it's going to come to output. They might not be as bright. It's going to come down to the white. To make a really good white, you need good LEDs. And so what you typically see from a cheaper LED manufacturer is a very muddy, greeny, kind of green white. It doesn't look that good. You got to do a lot of work on the back end with your camera to make it look really good. Failures are common because they run a little bit hot. They'll overboost their LEDs. So something like a ProLights fixture, what you end up seeing the difference there is you have more diodes. So you have a mint chip in there that you blend in to help make your whites really good. You have the colors in there. It's put across a multitude of fixtures. We share the CT Plus engine with Fresnel's and with Profiles. Similar LEDs for our PARs and for our cyc lights and everything like that. And what's really good about that is everything's in the same family. It's easy to learn. So you might have different fixtures, but they all operate the same. And it's a lot different than having like a multitude of different manufacturers. Some other stuff you'll notice with the cheaper LEDs is a lack of features. So specifically, maybe they won't have frequency adjust, which can be a really big problem. If you can't adjust your frequency and it's at a certain rate and you have a certain camera, all you're going to see is flickering. It's like when you would videotape a computer screen and you see that line scroll up and down. Same exact thing. It's the rate in which the LEDs are refreshing. That's what you want to pay attention to. If nothing else, make sure you can get a good white and make sure you can adjust your frequency just in case.
Yeah, Marcus, let me ask you this question. We've talked a lot about gear and budget. Does budget involve people as well? Like, does that play into the picture?
Absolutely. Like we were saying earlier, having the right person, in front of the console or being able to design your light plot or anything like that is a huge factor. You're only as good as the people that you have running the system that your church has. So, absolutely, I would say it's maybe the most important part of it at the end of it all. That I've seen really really good techs work on bad old systems and still make magic happen. And I've seen the wrong people on some of the best systems in the world, and the show's not that great. So it all comes down to how do I use the tools effectively, and having the right people in the right seats is a key thing. So
I know that there's also some churches out there that may operate a lot on volunteers. They might not have the budget to have a dedicated tech, and in that sort of environment, I'd say it might be money well spent to make sure you're talking to somebody, like Marcus, like myself, who knows enough about it and can help you and lead you and help spec something that is going to be both user-friendly, budget-friendly, and be able to give you what you want at the end of the day and grow into it. The best volunteer is going to be someone with an eagerness to learn and someone who thinks that the tech and the lighting is cool. Like, I got my start because I saw, tech and lighting, sound, and I thought it was cool. And I spent the extra hours after school with my tech teacher, just learning the stuff for free. And I developed a love for it. And it's that passion. If you can find someone with a passion for it, they're going to make sure that it looks good. They're going to help your product just as much as whatever you're putting in the air.
I second that absolutely. In my time in ministry years ago, I would say that I had hundreds of volunteers at the church I worked at. That was lots of volunteers in lots of different places. Everything from children's ministry, youth ministry, to the regular services and multiple services, and audio, video, lighting, and just all the different elements and everything. Finding that person with the right passion is key. It's a really important thing. But finding also that they understand the big picture of what you're doing is a huge thing too, that they get why they're there, and they understand the why behind even their volunteering. And when they understand that, everybody wins, because I can get somebody to hit a button, no problem. If they don't understand why they're hitting the button, they might work out for a little while, but it's probably not going to be a passionate thing for them. So that passion comes with an understanding of we're all in this together. Then you develop team leaders. You end up developing people who work in the industry, if they're in high school or, college age or whatever, and they are a volunteer at your church. Those people end up working in the industry, or they work at another church, or they work at that church, or something like that over the course of time, because they're passionate about it and they see the big picture. They see that vision, and they're on board with the church's vision, but they're also on board with the technical arts vision as well. So that understanding is a huge thing that as I was in ministry, I didn't get it at first. When I was first in ministry, I didn't realize that. And a couple of years in, I was like, wow, the buy-in is really happening when people understand what we're doing here. And then when we realize we're all a team with it and we're all doing this together for a purpose, then everybody's investment level as a volunteer got a lot higher at that point.
I think the person, when it comes to budget, the person is very important, whether that's training, like you're talking about, Nick, so that they understand what they're doing, or whether that's paying someone. I think it's very important. Here's why. I like to say that everything that we're working with is an instrument of worship. The lighting console is an instrument of worship. The lighting, the light is an instrument of worship. The sound console, just like a guitar player or a keyboard player, that's their instrument of worship. Or even a vocalist, that's a vocalist's instrument of worship, is how they sing. This is our instrument of worship, and everybody's wired differently. We would never go to our lead singer, who does a really good job singing, and say, you're going to be the main drummer now. I mean, there are some people that are that talented, but generally, we're not going to say to the lead singer, hey, go play drums. We're not going to say to the guitar player who just is amazing at guitar, oh, I now want you to play keyboard. So people are wired differently. And so when you're looking for that volunteer, when it comes to looking for the passion, when it comes to looking for the person who understands the why, there's going to be some people that are really good at running audio. There's going to be some people that are really good at running lighting. There's going to be some people that are really good at video. Fortnite, it's the same game, but I'm horrible at it, and my son is amazing at it. Why would you tell me to go run Fortnite when I'm a really great audio editor, or I'm really great something else? You know what I mean? And so I think talent assessment is also a part of budgeting. Being able to understand who's good at what as they go through the process, and applying the appropriate training or the appropriate staffing into those areas. I think a lot of churches miss that. And when you get the right person on the right job, playing the right instrument of worship, Marcus, like you said, you can have a really bad system and they make it shine. You get the wrong people in those areas. You tell that lead singer to go play drums, and all of a sudden the drums doesn't sound good. Like, the same thing happens with lights. The same thing happens with sound. And I think budgeting is not only money, but it's also talent assessment and talent budgeting as well. But let's get back to the practical pieces of budgeting. And one of the questions I had on here, I get this when I go into churches a lot. I would like both of you to jump in on this. So I guess we'll start with you first, Nick. But why LED?
You can't go backwards, right? Same reason you want a car instead of a horse and buggy, I suppose. But you just
drop the mic right there. Boom. Oh, what are you saying? Lighting? Is it drop the light? Or
Yeah, there you go. Drop the bulb, maybe something.
Drop the bulb.
Yeah.
Not an LED bulb.
What's good about LEDs nowadays, again, is you can make it multi-purpose. So before LEDs, you had a single source, and it was that color if you gelled it, or it was just a talent light without any filter in front of it. So now with that same light, you can go from white, you can go to blue, you can go to red, you can repurpose it as necessary. The feature set is just exponentially better. Energy savings. I know that there's some talk about whether energy savings actually mean anything because of the higher cost of the fixture, but you can do so much more with them. They're so much more user friendly, and it just you need less fixtures to do what you want to do because of LEDs. So you go to that rock and roll thing that we were talking about at the beginning. If you ever looked at an old school rock and roll rig, they had a whole stage left and stage right truss. They'd have 6 of them on top that are red, 6 in the middle that were blue, 6 below that green, and then maybe amber. Now you just need 6 because they can do all of that. So there's your cost savings.
What say you, Marcus?
Yeah. Gosh, the time saved by not having to change lamps on a fixture. And like, I don't know how many Source 4 lamps I changed in ministry years and years ago, but not having to do that. The cost for the facilities department to not have to replace lamps in house lights that are hard to get to, and going with LED house lights, and hopefully some that are full color changing, and with great whites as well, but in the house, saves all that time and ladders and dangerous situations and lifts and all the time that goes into a lot of that stuff. So it becomes a time thing for me. Also, yeah, power efficiency and everything else is a huge thing. That it's amazing. I saw some retrofits at AC Lighting. We're also the Chroma Q folks, and Chroma Q has the Inspire line, and the Inspire has gone into so many churches across the country for years. And I saw a project once that was, you put over 100 Inspire fixtures into a room and replace 60,000 watts of light with about 14,000 watts of light. And the power bill went down by thousands of dollars a month because the wattage was just so much less. And it got to this point where it's just like, some of the pastors and the financial people on the at the church were kind of like, how can we not do this? We have to make these changes because LED is so much more efficient and we're saving so much money over the course of time. You look at those savings per month and then multiply that out. The return on investment is huge when it comes down to LED. So, and your longevity is so much longer and, less worked and less heat and all the things. So.
Yeah, and also something else to think about is, back in the day, that single source 4 was 750 watts. So on the back end, not only is it drawing more power, but the installation of that power, the amount of circuits that you need to have installed in your church so that you can run them, because you can run one light on a circuit, unless you have something that takes DMX or something that helps spread that load. But with an LED on a same 20 amp circuit, instead of being able to put 2 Source 4 750s, depending on the wattage, you can put 5, 6, 7 lights on that same circuit. So you don't have to bring in as much power, pay that electrician to come in, add to your service panel, run the conduit, put the outlets in. The lights plug into each other, so you don't need to have an outlet everywhere that you need a light. You just bring a cord over to it. So there's some time, back to your point, time and money savings right there.
A lot less infrastructure is required, absolutely. And I feel like we used to have, like in a lot of churches, especially that were built maybe over 20 years ago or so, that we used to have a lot of fixtures in the air that were really just heaters that output a little bit of light. And now we have lights that output just a little bit of heat. And that's a good thing.
Very well said.
Yeah, I obviously the future is LED. I think that's where we're going. I still get that question. Another question that I get a lot, Nick, I'll throw this one to you. People ask me, should I get more lights or should I get more lights with features? Like, should I, have 6 lights or should I get 2 lights with features? And I know there's some methodology behind how many lights one moving light replaces of static lights. But I'm just curious, from your vantage point, you're a church, you're a pastor out there, should I get more lights or should I get more features?
Well, you should first identify what your needs and wants are, because that's what it comes down to. More lights doesn't necessarily mean better, but moving lights aren't necessarily better either, because yeah, that moving light can in essence replace lights, but it can only replace lights in that singular space. So if you're lighting a talent here with this moving light and you move this talent here, you can't still use this moving light. He's too close to the light. So in that sort of essence, if you have someone that moves around a lot in different planes, maybe something where you have more fixtures that you can pick them up with from different angles might be better suited for you. If you have more than one camera, how many cameras do you have? That's an important thing to think about. If you have more than one camera shot, you're going to need more lights. Doesn't matter if you have a really, really nice moving light over one camera. If you don't have anything over the other camera, he's dark. He doesn't look good on that shot. So kind of understanding your needs of your space is where I would start. Moving lights, I always put at the... I don't think that they are the start of your rig. I think they get added in after. I think a nice rig of profiles and Fresnels and pars can do amazing, amazing, amazing things. Moving lights are great. They really are. They are expensive. They are expensive to have. You need to know how to operate them. So back to that volunteer better have a lot of time, because he's going to have to learn how to program them. He's going to have to learn how to use them. They take up a lot of universe count. So you're going to need to make sure that you have a system that can handle them. All of that comes into play. But if you're just starting off, start off with some Fresnels, some pars, and some profiles. Make sure that they can do, if you're going LED, make sure they can do good whites, full colors. Focus, if you're in the houses of worship, focus on your deep blues. That's where you get your really, really beautiful emodical colors, like your purples, your pinks, your lavenders, and then make sure they can do white. That would be my suggestion.
Was that a mic drop, Marcus?
I think so. My only little addition to that would be, Nick is right that it's moving head fixtures are typically more of an addition, not a replacement for maybe static fixtures and high quality static fixtures. I was always amazed in ministry how often moving head fixtures happen to be broken and how much they needed repair. Because you have a robot literally that is moving around your room, and at any time that robot could stop doing everything 100% perfectly. And now I've got, it doesn't do this anymore. What happened? And even everything from ProLights to any brand, if you put a robot hanging in the air in a room, you're probably going to have an issue with it at some point in its life. Everything is kind of breaking down on us over time. So it's one of those kind of things. But it's a great thing to invest in if you want that extra pop in your space, but don't give that up at the expense of not having the right primary fixtures in your space. Having some great static fixtures and just having an even wash and maybe having a touch of color with some par cans and that kind of a thing is that's the basics. And most churches, especially small and medium-sized churches, are going to be happy just to do that, I would say, to a place where it looks good on camera and everything. And if you can do that, I think that's a win. Anything beyond that with movers, hey, it's just gravy at that point. It's just a little extra.
What's cool about ProLights is you guys have a light for every need. 100%. And I can go on your website, look around, and whatever my need is, I can find a light that fits that need. But let me jump to this. And Marcus, let's stay with you on this. What are some key red flags that show you need to upgrade your lighting system? Nick, I want to hear your viewpoint on this too, but Marcus, why don't you go ahead and answer that first?
Gosh, so many things, but every church, like we've said so many times, is different. But if you have gaps in your lighting, if your white color temperature is not the same, if you have fixtures, if you have DMX infrastructure issues, if you have things where you find that maybe some of your fixtures are just kind of dying over time, or you have some gaps where maybe your dimmers, if you have an old dimming system that is, you have dimmer channels that are dying and things like that. Rarely do systems just stop working altogether. It's a very slow, painful process of little things breaking over the course of time. And so you have to get to this point where you say, okay, it's time to invest in something new. And I would recommend when you're investing in something, like if you need new front lights, I would not say necessarily. Let's say your church has, let's say, 40 front lights in it, and you've got a whole bunch of source 4s, and you're trying to retrofit. There's going to be a cost associated with that. But what I wouldn't recommend doing, I mean, sometimes it has to be phased, but I would say replace all your front lights, and that is phase 1. Not half of your front lights, and that's phase 1, but all of your front lights if you can do it. So that way you standardize that at that point. Where then the next phase would maybe be changing all of your parkans to LED bars of some type, or maybe adding some movers at that point. And you kind of go in phases like that. But if, as you segment things, you see if there's a red flag that say, hey, I got a whole bunch of dimmers out, I got to replace these fixtures, you kind of have to, say, this is what we're doing. You kind of have to like rip off the Band-Aid and go for it at some point with a certain level of investment, wherever that may be for your church. So that leads down to saving for a rainy day and having these churches understand that you should always be saying, we have this purchase that we made today and we're very happy for it. We hope we made a good investment and we hope we have years of life out of it. But 10 years from now, maybe 12 years from now, we should think about replacing the thing we just bought and be preparing for that, because gear is going to die and break and things are going to happen. And you also might want to do something different than you're doing with your programming, and your whole rig might be different and expanded, and you might be a whole different type of worship style and all these different things a decade later that you didn't know on day one. 10 years later, you end up with needing a whole different kind of thing. So it all kinds of goes back to, assessing what you need and then filling in the gaps where your budget can, and doing the best you can with that. As far as red flags, there's so many different things. But if your lights go out in the service, then that's a pretty big red flag that it's probably maybe time to, upgrade your console or
either that or you got to pay your power bill, right?
That's right.
I'd say if you look up at your lights and you can see the dust because they're gray and not black, you might want to look into upgrading. Also, if you have extension cords because you don't know why that circuit isn't working anymore, might be time to upgrade. If you've broken out the roll of duct tape one too many times, also might be time to upgrade.
Yeah, I think it all points back to our needs more so than our wants. At the beginning of this segment, we talked about defining our church, right? And I'll give you an example of a church that I ran into. They had 6 or 7 lights that were down. I would say that was an immediate need, a big red flag. But they decided to hold off on replacing them because their pastor had changed and they wanted to hear the vision of the pastor and the worship pastor that he was bringing in and understand what their vision was before they went out and replaced those lights. And I thought that was really wise to understand what your church need is, to define who your church is, to see the vision, to understand the vision. Because once they get that from their pastor and they have it understood, they know the vision, they know the need, then they can understand the want and what they need to bring in to replace those lights that not only broke, but the new system that they may put in on top of that. So I thought that was really wise of that church. And I think it really sums up what we're talking about today. Don't necessarily go out and be like another church. Understand what your church is, what the vision of your church is, who you are, and then put in a lighting system that fits that. So amazing insights today. I'm so glad you guys were able to join us. If you want more information on ProLights, go to aclighting.com. They have a ton of websites there. And when I say websites, there's a lot of different brands. When you click on them, it brings you into a whole new website that can help you, whether you need a lighting console, house lights, or moving lights or static lights, which is ProLights. You can go into those different areas all at aclighting.com. Nick, Marcus, thank you again for joining us and bringing some amazing knowledge to our audience.
Pleasure, David. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Well, that wraps things up for today's episode. I can't wait to talk to you on the next Tech Arts podcast. Until then, I'm David Leuschner, signing off by wishing you a great day and praying God blesses every moment of your week. See you soon.
You have been listening to the Tech Arts Podcast, presented by Digital Great Commission Ministries. DGCM is a 501c3 nonprofit that was started to help churches with all things technical. Whether you need help building a team, finding the right gear, or just a better understanding of the church tech world, DGCM is here for you. Find out more about our free on-site visits, reports, and consulting by going to audiovideolighting.com. Digital Great Commission Ministries will help you run your church service like a pro. Find out more at audiovideolighting.com.
This episode of the Tech Arts Podcast is brought to you by ProLights. For more information, go to aclighting.com. From sold-out stadiums to intimate live performance venues, sound engineers agree on one thing for the best digital mixing consoles for live sound. The only name that matters is Digico. As the recognized worldwide standard for live audio mixing, Digico consoles are renowned for their industry-leading sound quality and ease of use. Whether your application is in a church, broadcast, theater, corporate, sports, or installed sound, Digico offers compact and affordable products. From the S21 all the way up to the pioneering power of the Quantum 852, Digico delivers the workflow, the feature set, and the absolute reliability that the world's biggest tours and programs have come to rely upon. If you're looking for a sound console, look to Digico for your answer. For more information on Digico, go to digico.biz. That's digico.biz. From front of house to center stage, for over 25 years, Earthworks microphones have sculpted the sounds of your favorite concerts, venues, and performances. Earthworks Audio is a sponsor of the Tech Arts Podcast. We are so happy to have them on board and excited to promote the new Earthworks SR117 vocal mic and capsules. To find out more about Earthworks Audio or to get your hands on this mic, go to earthworksaudio.com. That's earthworksaudio.com. Capturing emotion with sound. earthworksaudio.com. With Sermon Shots church-specific AI, sermon highlights don't go unnoticed. Easily transform your sermons into 10-plus bite-sized clips, ready for social media. It doesn't stop there. Refine each clip by adding or removing video sections, give them your unique touch with colors, fonts, design edits, and create the goosebump moment with background music. Elevate your message and reach hearts locally and globally. Start today by going to sermonshots.com. Luminex Network Intelligence manufactures data distribution equipment for professional lighting, audio, and video applications. Luminex offers a complete range of network switches, converters, nodes, and DMX splitters, providing AV designers and technicians with cutting-edge technology to build complete data distribution systems for churches, big events, or large venues. Through products like the Luminode, Luminex keeps it simple and allows the user to easily control what they need to do or how they need to do it. Whatever your configuration is today, or whatever your configuration is in the future, Luminex is designed for today, but built for tomorrow. Luminex Network Intelligence, AV networking made easy. For more information, go to aclighting.com. That's aclighting.com.